We are the communication panel, and what I think's happened today is that we've all been communicating our absolute passion for parenting and the change in education that we need, and it's coming through with so much love and genuine desire to see these changes. I wanted to do what Elizabeth did and go back and say, and I love that, and I love that, and I love that, and I love that. So you've done it, ditto. Amazing. Communication is going on at so many different levels, and this panel and I have been communicating now for weeks, so I feel like I've got to know them. I did exactly what Annie did when Marlene said communication. I went to the dictionary. And the definition of communication in the Oxford English Dictionary is imparting or exchanging of information through speaking, writing, or some other medium. And I want to look at the other medium, bodies, because that's how we communicate too. Our bodies, we know that. We know body language is really important, don't we? In Albert Morabian's breakdown in his research, when he talks about face-to-face communication, either one-to-one or one-to-many, he breaks it down into 7% of the meaning is conveyed by words, 38% by the tone you say things in, and 55% body language. So possibly actions do speak louder than words, and words are really important as well. The definition goes on to say the conveying or sharing of thoughts, ideas, and feelings. Now, when it talks about feelings, to me, that's talking about emotions and coming from the heart. And if we're going to start talking about the heart, I think this is really important because we know that the heart is a really, really crucial part of communicating. And the Institute of Heart Math have done immense research, incredible research. Does anyone know about the Institute of Heart Math? Yeah, it does amazing work, doesn't it? It talks about the energy that comes from the heart. The definition also gives an example, and it gives an example and says there was a breakdown and lack of communication between Pamela and her parents. Is that just the Malay of society? We're looking at the negative. Why give an example about the lack of something? But that's not strictly true, is it? There's not ever a lack of communication. There may be a lack of positive, effective communication, but communication is going on constantly. These body bags of energy, we're communicating all the time, whether we like it or not. What we're thinking, what we're feeling is coming out of this body. The energy is coming out of the body. And it is interesting, and I loved what you said this morning, Diana. Parents that I work with will very often say, well, the kids don't know that things aren't quite right. We don't ever argue in front of them. They don't know. Yes, they do. They pick up on it, don't they? It's in the air, it's in the atmosphere. They do know. We know. If we walk into a room and something's gone on, especially if someone's had an argument, you can say things like you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. Or you could say, wow, the vibes in this place are great, because they are. And that's what we're picking up on. It's the energy that people are giving out. In 2001, I was going through a really, really difficult divorce. I was having an awful time, was severely depressed. I was on medication. I was having challenges with my ex, with finances, and with my 3 boys who've all got special needs. I mean, I believe we've all got special needs, but we had challenges with their education, with behaviour, physical difficulties, emotional, the whole thing. So I was in a really bad place, and I know that I was just emitting that through my pores, through every thought, through my actions, through my behaviour. It was bouncing off them. We were just sort of spiralling down into that, ever-decreasing circle of depression. It was awful. I was really, really grateful that I found personal development. Nikki found it too, all these self-help books, but a lot of people call it shelf help, don't they, when you've got, a whole row of them. Then I found NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy, energy therapies, and just the whole universal laws of attraction and reciprocity, and really understanding that what you focus on will flourish. I turned everything round. I was just so glad and grateful that I'd learnt this. It changed everything around with my boys. And it was only then that I really got the Gandhi quote. We must be the change we wish to see in the world. I didn't get it before, so I had to change the way I looked at things, the way I felt about things. Everything changed then. So I was incredibly grateful. I then went on to offer supported lodging to teenagers, displaced and disaffected teenagers, just through a scheme, a local scheme, Child Action Northwest. And in 2011, I had a young man come to me called Nathan. And Nathan was the eldest of 5 children. His father had always been absent. The 4 other children were girls. 2 elder ones were in care, and the 2 younger ones were on the at-risk register. And Nathan had been offending since he was 12 years old. And he believed that he wasn't wanted, he wasn't worth anything. His mum didn't like boys, so it was a really difficult background. It wasn't long after Nathan had been with me when we could see real changes. And I believe the change was because I communicated with him differently. I was coming from a different place to anything he'd experienced before. I would respond to him rather than react. I actually talked with him, not at him. I listened to him. I gave him options. I asked for his opinions. He was just treated in a completely different way. So it made a difference to him. One of the things that I used to do that made him smile was I never ever told him what not to do. I only ever told him what I wanted him to do. I only ever focused on what I wanted to happen. So I would never tell him to don't do anything, because we know, don't we, that you cannot process a negative. So when I say to you right now, whatever you do, don't think about elephants. Do not think about elephants. The last thing I want you to do is think about elephants. Even if you're very clever, very sophisticated and say, no, I thought about polar bears or blue giraffes, you still had to focus on the thing I didn't want you to think about before you could not think about it. So why do we want to bring attention to the things we don't want children or anyone to do? I just turned it round. And I asked Nathan to do the things I wanted him to do, which were just, bring your pots down from your bedroom, hang the towels up, make sure you know where your phone is, stay sober, that didn't always work. Come home on time, close the doors quietly, speak to me nicely, and have respect. And I actually did witness respect from Nathan not very much longer after that. We were in the kitchen one day, and he was looking out of the window, and there was a car going around the courtyard, and he was looking and looking back and looking out. And I said, do you know them? He said, yeah, they're mates. Well, ask them to come in then. And he went, what, in your house, here? I went, yeah, ask them in for a drink. So these boys came in, sat down. I don't think Nathan was used to that. I don't think they were either. And that's when I witnessed respect from Nathan, because one of the boys was swearing, and he was really quick to say, hey, none of that in here, we don't need any of that. I'd heard Nathan swearing on lots of occasions, in other places. So that was just nice to see. It's just nice to know you're making that difference. In 2012, when I came to the San Diego Parenting 2.0 conference, Nathan then had to go into respite care. He didn't want to. He wasn't going to go. So he didn't want to be placed in yet another unknown location. So he offended again and ended up back in a young offenders unit. But for him, that was familiar, and that was preferable to being in another new place. So he went away, and I didn't have any contact with him. When I arrived back from the conference, I arrived back to the news that my mum had had a stroke, and that my brother-in-law had got terminal cancer. So I decided then that I wasn't going to offer the supported lodging anymore. At the end of 2012, I got a phone call from a lady police officer that I'd been involved with Nathan. And she rang to tell me that he'd come out of the young offenders unit and was looking for somewhere to stay. And she said he'd asked if he could come back and live with me. He couldn't, it wasn't possible. I was living with my mum and looking after my mum and my sister. She also told me that she thought that I was the only person she'd known him ever really engage with or have any respect for. And whilst that's really nice to hear, it's incredibly sad. And that was only because I probably engaged with him and showed him respect in the first place. And as well as the way I interacted with him and showed him respect and responded to him and expected good and positive from him, which I knew was possible, I also was continuously sending out positive, loving energy and thoughts from my heart. And I know that made a huge difference. We know, I mentioned the Institute of Heart Math before, and there's a book called The Energetic Heart by Roland McCarthy of the Institute, called The Energetic Heart. He talks about this. He talks about the difference it makes, what we're thinking from the heart and what we're feeling. We know that the electromagnetic field from us can be felt a long way around us, and people walk into it and can feel it, negative or positively. We also know that the energy from the heart is 60 times more powerful than that of the brain. That's amazing. We know that what we're feeling from the heart and sending out is actually sort of registered by their brain and their body, so it's affecting them. So if we send out just positive, loving thoughts, that's going to make a difference. I believe that's the communication of love. And I think that is the first positive point of communication. And I also believe that that is the basis and the foundation for every other kind of positive and effective communication. Thank you for listening. And carrying on this theme, I have the lovely Alan Wilson. Alan does a lot of work that I do with children and parents, and we're definitely singing off the same hymn sheet, so I shall let him come up here and sing.